Hey guys, it's Mythology's Bot here with Lower-Hab-Karl. I'm going to go over one of his new builds, his Toxin Medic build. Thank you for being here, guys. I really appreciate the likes, support, subscribes, pretty much everything. If you guys hear a lot of noise in the background, that's Thorin messing with some boxes. So we have a cat on call. But let's get in the Psycharium and check this out real quick.
You've come to learn.
I've been having a lot of fun with this build too, so I've been playing it a decent amount recently. So, as always, let's go over the weapons first, and then we'll go over the talent tree, the breakdown, and just in general what we got going on, and just some tips and tricks. So, excuse me. Let's go into the bone saw. So there aren't any different marks of the bone saw. Excursions, MK4. The dump stat on that is mobility, but damage, finesse, first target, and critical bonus are all going to be maxed. Now on those perks, I think one of the things that Hive Scum troubles with is a whole bunch of enemies that block it in with the dodge bonus. So I have unarmored and unyielding. It also does pretty much nothing to flak and carapace, so that's one reason why we have unarmored on there. And it's really good at splitting mutants at that point, and a couple other like choice creatures and bosses. But unarmored for the perks, and then unyielding as well, just for boss damage. And then for those blessings, these are fairly common blessings. Shred feeds into a lot of our crit bonuses. A lot of things will stack with critical chance. And then Wrath just to get that cleave up there, which is a pretty good one. So then we have the needle pistol, the good old trusty needle pistol, the Brax MK2. For the low stat on that one, mobility as well. But for the perks on that one, we have flak armor and unyielding just to kind of get through all those enemies. And then for the blessings, we have ghost and concentrated fire on that. We also have unyielding enemies under the perks too as well to get those bosses included on that as well. But that's fairly self-explanatory. Ghost is just there to keep you immune to ranged attacks when you hit a weak spot, which this thing is made to do. And the concentrated fire when unchained weak spot hits. So you're literally just aiming for heads, right? That's the best point. It does have some problems with some ammo. You can spend a lot of ammo very quickly with this weapon. But that's not too much of an issue. But let's go into the curios real quick. So like normal, you can kind of see that 17% toughness all the way through the board. And then pretty much the standard damage resistance gunner, combat ability regeneration on all of them, and then toughness, revive speed, kind of switching those up. But in general, damage resistance gunners, some revive speed. I probably should put some stamina in there because I use that a lot, but my stims actually help that a lot too. So let's go in the talents real quick, and then right after that, we'll go in the stim lab, and you guys can see what I'm stimming up on, huh? So, right off the bat, so the beginning of the tree, we kind of come down here and take Voice of Tertium. So, replenished on range, toughness, kill, elites and enemies replenish 15% toughness. Precision violence, so essentially melee hits replenish 4% toughness, melee critical hits and weak spot hits plus 8, critical weak spot hits replenish 12. You're going to be aiming for heads anyways, you might as well make the best use of that. And then for the passive, so this is just nice because sometimes your shield goes down and you need that shield to be up more often than not, right? So, gain stun immunity for 6 seconds, restore 50% toughness when toughness is broken. 10-second cooldown. It's a useful talent to have just to kind of save yourself every once in a while. Then we have Sticky Hands over here, so weapon swap speed, additional recoil, and spread when firing from the hip or bracing. So that makes that needle pistol very steady, very steady. And that's really what you want because you're aiming for heads, you're aiming for necks, you're aiming for weak spots, essentially. And then we have Float Like a Butterfly, perfect blocks and successful dodges add 20% critical. This feeds into pretty much all our critical chance. And for the Blitz then, so I really like the Chem Grenade. I really like the Boombringer. I like the Blackout because it comes back. It's regenerative, right? And you can have some talents that feed into that as well, right? So here we'll go down to the main core of the Hive Scum. These talents right here affect pretty much all the dodge talents, right? So regain 10% stamina on successful dodge. You're dodging all the time. Tis but a scratch, so replenish 30% toughness over 3 seconds when taking ranged toughness damage. Losing all toughness cancel the effect. It helps, but tis a scratch. Slippery customer, so when sliding you count as dodging its melee attacks. Very useful. I really like Nimble over Alley Rat, mainly because Nimble kind of just helps you. I tend to jump off of areas with Alley Rat, and that's not to say it's bad, it's just I'll jump off a cliff, and I don't want to do that. So Sample Collector kills replenish 1% of your cartel special cooldown. Killing Chem Toxin infected enemies replenishes 2% instead. So just replenish your toxin better. So then we have Anarchist over here. Drop down in the Blessed Stimm, so it just helps us clear stims out. And then we have Stim Supply here. So we're deploying essentially a med pack that buffs up our stims, and we'll go over the stims here in a little bit. And then your stim has essentially a copy of those materials, and so it takes your stim and gives it a copy. So AoE copy. Then we have practice deployment right here. So once a stim becomes available to use, collect it or otherwise, stim supply instantly becomes ready and for deployment. Perfect. Let's start all the way over on the left side, and then we'll move over on the right, because the right one's going to be one of our more critical ones, right? So right now we have Pickpocket. So this is just to help us in case we'll never run out of ammo this way. It's just very useful. Killing an elite or a special enemy with a melee attack while ammo is below 20% will fill it up to 20%. Hey, you never run out of ammo. That's great. So we have Swift Endurance, because we kind of required to take that one. And then we'll bump over here. So a Hive City Brawler up to 20% damage reduction depending on available stamina. Additionally, up to 20% melee damage depending on spent stamina. That's just really good to have, because you're constantly in flux of stamina. It's going to be constantly resource you're going to be using, especially with that med pack that we have and that stim, which will generate some of that as well and reduce down the cost of some of the things as well. So here we go into the main tree of the chem. So right now we have a coded weaponry right here. So melee critical strikes infect enemies with 1 stack of chem toxin. Then we have pocket toxin for our blackout grenades. That's just a nice little thing to have, some extra like spread of some disease, I guess, or some chem toxin. Splash damage, so killing an elite with a melee attack inflicts up to 10 enemies within 4 meters of the target and with 2 stacks of chem toxin. It's really good to just disperse that too. Toxic renewal, so every time you're infecting people with this, your chem toxin is generating toughness for you, so you're going to constantly keep that up when you're infecting large groups of enemies. I also have targeted toxin, just because this makes damage. It's just very nice, essentially, to make monstrosities and a lot of enemies deal way less damage to your group. That's great. So then we'll go into chem dependency. Using a stim grants you chem dependency for 90 seconds. Each stack gains 10% ability cooldown. Up to 3 max stacks. Stacks decay 1 at a time. So if you stim up, you get a chemical dependency. And then we go down to chem enhanced over here. So each stack of dependency grants critical chance. Feeds into a lot of our talents. We can see one right here, coded weaponry, and a couple more up there as well. And then Chem Fortified, using a stem replenishes 50% toughness. Additionally, each stack of dependency grants 5% damage reduction. That's amazing. That ending line right there, 5% damage reduction, toughness damage reduction, that's very key. Very, very useful. So let's just kind of go over the tree real quick. So we kind of stick here into the middle. This is like our core right here. Come down, and these are the really important ones, the really dodge talents ones right here, those guys. Come over here to the right, grab a few talents underneath the stim supply. Come over left, grab some critical ones for pickpocket, just because it's really necessary. I like Hive City Brawler. There probably could be another one you could use, but I think this is a really fun one to kind of play with. Come down here, grab like the core. I would like to grab some of this stuff on the sides. I don't have the points, right? I just don't have the points. So yeah, we could just take City High Brawler and probably put it into Toxic Mania if we wanted to, but I kind of like the way that feeds off your stamina. And then grab pretty much all the core talents here. So let's go into the Stim Lab real quick. So the Stim Lab on this one's it's not very complex at all, right? We just have, essentially, we're going to go over the way here on the left, essentially on our feather. and stack up on the movement speed, dodge distance, dodge speed, and dodge recovery. And then we go into these talents, so stamina cost, attack speed, stamina cost. So essentially your stamina cost for pretty much everything is nothing, which is awesome. Love that. Your weapon swap speed is bumped. Your attack speed is hugely bumped. So it's very useful to kind of have that extra stuff on there. And then we just have 1 point into Kamala 1 just for a little bit of cooldown reduction to help you out a little bit. So let's get into the weapons real quick. So here we have the needle pistol. Obviously, blue kind of does a dispersal toxin. You can kind of see that once he dies, that hits everybody around him. That's really good for getting the chem toxin out in the air, right? I usually kind of have this one preset on blue and then switch over when I see a harder target. Just because it'll spread this out to pretty much everybody out there, right? And it's really good at dealing with crowds. And as long as you're like fairly, like, because that's very steady shot there. As long as you're fairly practiced about shooting weak spots, right? It shouldn't be too hard to maintain that and not to use too much ammo. Because you will go through ammo very quickly on this weapon because it's very easy to empty a whole clip into somebody, right? Well, I missed there, but same difference. It's very easy to just get a whole clip drained. See, we're almost about halfway out through our ammo. But let's go over to the yellow. This is the acid side, or essentially the chem toxin side. And this is used for dealing with the harder targets, the big guys. Yeah, we can see it on this Reaper right here. Not that the other one wouldn't do a ton, but you can see how much that's stacking up, right? Dead. Very good for dealing with if you can hit people in critical locations. Kind of see right there. Hit them right in the head. But it's very good for dealing with very hardened targets. And even in the head against some of these Carapist enemies, which is not necessarily true. See, that still does a very significant amount of damage. Same with some of the other locations. If you get any spots that are open flesh, that's way better. That's going to help you out a little bit. Yeah, see how that stacks in there. But this is the reason why we have flak damage on that, just because it goes through head pieces really, really quickly. But if you're aiming necessarily, see, it can go pretty well through a lot of crit locations. But as long as you're aiming in a weak spot location, you're doing pretty good. Or if you can hit those consistently. And sometimes you can just kind of hit like, here, let's just kind of see. Yeah, okay. So sometimes, let's just go with a bulwark. This is just easier. So see how this doesn't do anything, right? But sometimes you can just kind of hit into any flesh spot you can see. It doesn't necessarily have to be a weak spot all the time. It definitely helps, right? It definitely helps it being a weak spot. But like getting these flesh spots where you can get into like a liver, a kidney, that kind of thing, where you essentially would have something like that, is going to net you a little bit more than hitting straight armor, always. And then, just in general, sometimes like when you're firing, you hit one shot, done. So there's some enemies you can actually just wait, you can kind of bop, they're done. Like you just know that they're dead. We'll try this out. 1, 2, oh, we're out of ammo. That happens. Yeah, so like even one shot on him brought him down to half health. So like 3 shots is going to melt him. So it's just really good to kind of know like, oh, I hit that guy twice. He's going to die. It's just going to happen. And then just kind of, like I said, prepping crowds with this to make sure that dispersal kind of helps out a little bit more. That's really useful for kicking off a lot of talents. And then the other mark of the needle pistol has a very slight nuance. Essentially, when the hit with the, I believe it's this toxin right here, things explode and stagger things around them. Now, I really like the chem dispersal on this one for this one right here because there is a really good chem dispersal on that kind of generalistic right there. But that's the needle pistol right there. That's fairly self-explanatory, very easy to do. Let's go into this is the cleaver right here. So obviously we have it coated with the chem toxin right there. You can kind of see that's the block push. Very good block push. Nice swing. It has like a secondary cut with it because you're kind of dragging the blades across it, right? It's a serrated edge, right? You can see how you're kind of ripping down on that. But anything you can hit that's kind of like, obviously we have our weapon spec for that. We have it spec for unarmored and unyielding. So you can see how much damage that does to some of these big guys, right? Now, if you can get it, yeah, hooked into them like that, that's the best part of that. That sideways cleave where you drag down on them, that's great. And then the other toxin where you wipe this on, I have this purple toxin right here. This is going to be your brittleness, and we're going to check this out on the crusher. I kind of like the block push a lot because it's very quick, right? You can get that toxin and that bleed up very quickly. Now, this weapon is fairly unwieldy without the chems. The chems help significantly because they're going to boost your attack speed. They're going to boost a lot of your movement and your stamina costs. So that's going to make this block pushing a lot faster. It's going to make your movement faster. It's going to make pretty much everything a lot easier with this weapon. This weapon, I think, specifically needs this line, or at least some kind of attack speed, to really help it out, because it is, you can kind of see, very, very slow weapon, but very useful. So let's check this out on the chem toxin real quick. So let's boost this up. So we're going to take our Stimm, our personal Stimm, and we're going to kind of see, how much faster that is, how much less stamina we're using. It's barely any stamina. You can dance, you can push. It's great for having pretty much all this stuff going at once. Of course, that Stimm's going to go away eventually. And then when that goes away, obviously we have our party pack for everybody else too. So we have essentially a good old Stimm. And this, I will say this, when you throw this kit down with all these Stimms in here that I have in here, you are practically immune to damage. So it's very good for getting people for reses. Very good for using it in clutch locations where you know movement's going to be a very critical thing. Dog waves, all that kind of stuff. It's very good for helping out the team. So use it to the best point of your advantage. Pop it down at critical locations. Or if somebody needs res, you know what's going to help them out is the ability to move right when they get up. That's very useful. So we're going to just pop this down. Same effect here. Just lasts a little bit longer. As long as you stay within that area AoE, you're going to have some nice stuff. Plus, you're going to cleanse corruption, and you're going to be immune to it if you sit in there for long enough, right? Yeah, very fast attacks there. So, anyways, that's just kind of the basic kind of attack function, but we can kind of go, so you can kind of see it has a cross guard right there, block push. It's got a nice swing angled pattern. But the Stimms really help this weapon kind of function because it really needs that attack speed to be able to move quickly. And that block push, where you're block pushing, because you're essentially using this thing as a giant, like, pusher. You just cleave them. Just push them a little bit. Like, yeah, it's not very far to push them. It's a huge weapon. So it just helps it out a lot more when you have the Stimms going and you have the chem dependency going. That helps your toughness damage reduction. And then throwing, obviously, the blackout grenades. The blackouts are just there to help you out. Spread toxin. See, look at that. Lots of toxin goes everywhere. Really messes up a lot of these lighter troops, especially a lot of the, you can see right there, a lot of these range units that get hit by this thing will easily hurt very badly. Doesn't do so much to Reapers, but if you throw it right at their feet, it's going to knock just about everybody off, except for some of the bigger guys, right? So that's just really useful, and they come back. So, like, I've used it for helping out during waves, knocking down dogs off of people, very useful. Helping getting people, like, clearing an area next to a person when you need to res them, so you throw a few of these down, and then throw down your kit, and then help them get up. It's a very useful crowd clear. And one of the things I think the Hive Scum has a little trouble dealing with is a whole bunch of people in the way, because their core mechanic is dodging, and when they're tripped up by a whole bunch of different things, they're dead. You can't live from that. But this is just kind of a new build with Lower-Hab-Karl here, our Chem Toxin build. Tons of fun. I'm really liking it. I tried it out a couple times. I used it during stream the other night on Sunday. So we're probably going to do it a little bit tonight. I wasn't using this cleaver, but I'm really enjoying it with the way the toxins are helping it kind of boost itself up. So like I said, I really enjoyed this build. But thanks, guys, for the likes, subscribes. It really helps out anytime you guys are there for us. But we will be back hopefully here pretty soon with Skitarii here in a week and a new build with that one. So good seeing you guys out there. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys later, okay?